It's day 5 of my dope fast, and I want to talk about the 5 dopamine addictions that I'm giving up. It started when I was 12 years old. I remember having that bootleg black cable box that came with free porn. As I got a little bit older, 13 and 14 years old, we changed from dial-up internet to high-speed internet at the house, and my parents had no clue about internet blockers, website blockers, or anything like that. The accessibility was just crazy, and nobody really understood what kind of impact it would have. Men like myself are dealing with libido issues and erectile dysfunction, and most of it is mental because we are looking for a different kind of stimulation, one that sex can't provide. Porn is replacing not only sex, but the intimacy around sex, right? The love, compassion, the cuddling, the holding, all of that is an intimate part of our human nature. And if the sex itself doesn't bring the same dopamine spike as porn, then all the other stuff goes along with it. And it's one big downfall that has unfortunately impacted many people's relationships and lives, and has led to divorce and even worse outcomes. The good things about porn addiction is that there is no physiological withdrawal symptoms when stopping. It's purely mental, and you really just have to power through, be strong, put limiters in place, and just stop watching porn. Your life, your relationships, your connections are all going to get much, much deeper once you quit pornography. Give yourself that break, and you're able to return to a much more natural feeling around sex and sex drive itself. Social media and binge tech causes a dopamine spike about 150% above baseline. This addiction has affected me for 18 years. It started when I was 14 years old. I remember rushing home from school to check my MySpace to see how many notifications I got, to upload new pictures to my page. One of the big dopamine spikes around MySpace was the whole top 8 thing. They really understood how to put a mechanism in place to watch kids chase validation, and constantly shifting around their top 8 and top 16. It even got to the top 32 where you got to rank your friends in order. I think it's, looking back, a pretty crazy practice, but it was the early days of the internet and social media, and we were really trying to appeal to people's needs. There's over 20 different applications for messaging people. We all have WhatsApp, Telegram, our messenger app, email. Now we're more connected than ever, but we're also lonelier than ever. So I think we have to take a step back and understand that real connection takes real effort. The easier you make it, the less valuable it becomes. One of the biggest symptoms of a binge tech addiction, especially nowadays, is the shortened attention span. With these reels, some of them only lasting 5 to 10 seconds, and then the constant flip through, you're not even digesting any information. Nothing is processing. You are passively engaging in entertainment that your brain is relying on just for dopamine hits. So even if there is an educational short, it's a 99.9% chance you're not going to remember that. I think we've all watched hundreds of thousands of reels, some of us only thousands, but how many do we really remember? Social media itself, the reels, the videos, the content, everything is just really engineered now for instant gratification. I think it's really important also to put limiters in place when it comes to scrolling. There's tons of apps that limit your access to social media. I suggest keeping it under 1 hour per day. Even though I've deleted all my social media apps for this experience, I still find myself picking up my phone and looking at the interface to see where those apps used to be, almost like navigating my thumb to press, only to notice that they're not there anymore. So there's that reflex that's still there to look for these applications because it's such a habit. I think about kids today who have profiles as under 10 years old and are scrolling through YouTube shorts and Instagram reels and TikTok at such an early age, some of whom's parents are actively telling them that that's okay, so that they stay distracted rather than go off and misbehave and be actual kids. The next addiction is marijuana. This has been a 14-year addiction that started when I was 18 years old. I remember smoking my first joint with my friend from high school and his parents. After that first joint, everything changed. I found immense comfort in that relaxation. Movies, TV shows, food, music, everything was so heightened after smoking a joint. Long-term use of marijuana lowers your dopamine levels to a point where sober life feels so dull that you want to escape it, and you keep looking for more potent versions of drugs. Now, while I've experimented with other drugs, Marijuana has been the only consistent drug that I've actually used day in and day out. Marijuana spikes dopamine around 200% above baseline. Some of the physiological and psychological impacts of marijuana that I've dealt with, and I know other people have dealt with, are definitely memory loss, a lack of motivation, paranoia. After those first couple of months of experimenting with marijuana, I shipped off to college, and at that point it became a daily habit. So it became a very social thing where everybody was sitting in a circle, laughing, listening to music, sharing good times. And there's also a lot of good memories around smoking weed and being high with my friends. And I wouldn't trade those for anything, but there was definitely healthier ways we could have engaged and spent time together. I got so addicted to the idea of the relaxation behind weed and that I needed it for sleep that no matter where I went in the world, I found weed. I remember moving to Florida for a year and the first night hitting a gas station to find the first suspect looking person and put him in my car and drove to some trailer parks and was able to find some pretty nasty weed. And then it went from there. There's this humongous concern about the potency increasing, also access to the vapes, edibles, tinctures. I mean, it's a limitless end of supply when it comes to marijuana. And now, because it's legal, the accessibility in places like New York City is just through the roof, right? No longer do you have to even go to dispensaries. There's plenty of corner stores. People are selling weed on the corner of streets, on plastic tables, and it's all kosher. But the problem with that is we have kids as young as 15, 16, who are smoking weed and starting that process that early. So casual overuse of marijuana is now completely normalized. You go to certain areas, especially in the States where it's legalized and people are smoking on their lunch break, people are high at work. As long as you're functioning at some level, people usually don't question you. Now, there's some jobs where people are getting high, but you need extreme focus and you need extreme concentration, just like an air flight controller, to be able to do your job effectively. So we're starting to see marijuana meddle into people's work lives and it affecting their productivity and other people's safety. If you feel like it's time to quit for you and you've developed anxiety around weed and every time you get high, your brain is speaking to you saying, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, I would listen to that voice. I would start tapping into that voice and understanding that there's something there. The medicine is trying to tell you that it's been enough. It's time to experience life sober. It's time to live life to the fullest. It's time to thrive. My fourth addiction is binge eating. This started at the exact same time as my marijuana addiction, and you can understand why. The munchies are something that were, again, a humongous pleasure when they first started. There was nothing better than smoking a joint, going to Chipotle, dogging a burrito, or all-you-can-eat sushi, feeling fat, and then just laying down, smoking another joint, and then doing it all over again. And I was a young athlete, so there wasn't a huge physical impact on my body at that point. But I remember the time where I got suspended from the basketball team for a DUI, and that's when my weight really took off. My depression levels went up, and I needed more and more stimulation to distract myself from the piece of shit that I was becoming. I would tell my mom, hey, I need to buy some college books. She'd give me $500 and I'd buy weed and have, Chipotle money for a month. And yes, I love Chipotle. At that point, I was in a real dopamine spiral with all of my addictions. The marijuana, the binge eating, the binge tech, and the masturbation and pornography. It was all tied together, and there's a humongous societal impact with binge eating. Almost 70% of Americans are overweight. When I go back home to Serbia, I don't see that same reflection because there are certain countries who have put rules in place when it comes to corporations and what we're allowed to feed people. It seems in this country that profit maximization is the major concern, and so most of us are consuming things that aren't even real food. Fast food offers no nutrition, and all those sweets are garbage and not real food. The fifth addiction I want to talk about is gambling. This started shortly after college. I met a friend of a friend who was into gambling, and it quickly turned into one of my favorite activities. I started with the FanDuel daily fantasy lineups. A couple years after that, I really got into poker and was playing with friends socially through applications. Again, there was this social construct tied into most of my addictions, and gambling really took off for me when I started making money. That's when I was able to decide where am I going to put my funds. And, it quickly spiraled to a point where I would gamble really heavily when I was drinking. I would take humongous risk, and I was okay with, burning an entire paycheck. I was living at home with my mom. I thought it was okay. And the thing with gambling is it's 3 steps back, 1 step up. And that 1 step up is always going to make you feel like, whoa, maybe I can take a huge leap, right? Maybe I can turn $1 into $1 million. It's been done before. We hear these crazy stories of people who make millions and millions of dollars in the casinos and with sports betting. And we think, wow, I could do that too. And like with trading, like with the casino, right? Even there, the people who are making a lot of money, they're skilled, they're talented, they are patient, they're calculated. There's been a couple instances where people are lucky, but those who are consistently making money are doing it because they've developed a skill set. Waking up and putting $1,000 on a tennis bet while I was working, having tennis on one screen and my spreadsheet on the other screen was necessary. How could I do my work without the excitement of gambling $1,000 at lunch? It became such a sickness, and all the gamblers have been there where when we do make a decent amount of money, we have this fantasy that suddenly we're going to move to Vegas and become a capper and, just gamble the rest of our lives and make money. Gambling on the outcome of another man's effort is complete disaster. What I'm seeing even now with the younger generation is they're getting access to FanDuel and all these other applications, and their parents are even opening up accounts for them, giving them money to gamble because their friends are doing it and they don't want to feel left out. And it's a social thing, Mom. We all talk about the game and the lines and it's only $10. But then again, when that kid goes to college and he gets some of his own money, the textbook money, he might gamble more, and then when he leaves and he makes his own money, God knows what that disaster looks like. So these are habits that people really need to understand will keep growing. The more money you make, the more money you'll gamble. And it's a never-ending spiral. For some people, if you can really manage your habit, good for you. But I think for most of us, with increased resources come increased risk. And I'm done taking risks on other people's energy and efforts. It's time to take a risk on myself. Gambling has the biggest dopamine spike. It's almost equivalent of methamphetamines, up to 1,000% above baseline. The reason for this is because there's an uncertainty around winning and how much money you can make. Again, there's that prospect that you can turn $1 into $1 million. It's been done before. Gambling starts to rewire the brain to crave a massive amount of risk. Also, what happens is you become comfortable with losing. You become comfortable with calling yourself a loser and a degenerate, and then you start to reformulate your own perceptions of yourself. I had years where I made $300,000, but I had nothing to show for it. The more money I made, the more money I gambled. My estimated losses over 10 years is around $300,000. It's around $30,000 per year. The last few years, it's been around $50,000 to $60,000 per year. As you get older and you think about starting a family and the financial implications of that, you start to feel the real financial stress and the depression that comes around you being stuck in that loop of making and giving it all back. There's a certain masochism to it. And again, all of that ties in together to a point where you really become the worst version of yourself. This is what's led to my desire to change, to become better, to gamble on myself, to take huge risks, to change the world, to help others. It's a great feeling now, and I'm feeling dopamine just from talking about it, but it's all about the follow through. It's all about having the strength and actually carrying it through. I'm on day 5. I know I'm gonna get to day 30. I know I'm gonna get to day 365, and I know I'm gonna get to year 100 without it. That's how I feel. That's who I'm gonna become. The only way out is discipline, delayed gratification, and betting on yourself. Good luck.